In February of 2016, the Brooklyn Nets hired Sean Marks to become the new general manager for the franchise. He was tasked with one thing: pulling the franchise out of the grave where they were buried by the infamous Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade. A trade that saw Brooklyn give up 3 of their draft picks outright and a pick swap to the Boston Celtics. One of the first orders of business for Marks was to try and get a first-round pick in the 2016 draft. He succeeded on draft night, as Marks traded Thaddeus Young to the Indiana Pacers for the draft rights to Caris LeVert, a 6'7" wing out of Michigan. Prior to the draft, LeVert was struggling with a Jones fracture in his left foot that required 3 surgeries over the span of his last 3 seasons in college. Watching LeVert in college, you got the feeling that he had lottery pick type talent. His gait was smooth, he was long, had the tools to be a good defender, and he was a good shooter, at least from the college 3-point line. He kinda reminded me of a Diet Mountain Dew version of a younger Paul George. He just had all the tools that teams usually look for in a modern NBA wing. LeVert also improved every year, even though he played 18 and 15 games in his junior and senior years respectively. He took a huge jump across the board from his freshman year to his sophomore year in 2014, where he played 37 games, but that's when the foot problem started to rear its head later that May. For a team that had the unfortunate combination of rebuilding while not having their own lottery picks, while also being only able to snag a late first-round pick, LeVert was the type of high upside swing that the Nets were justified in taking. The Nets tasked their own doctor, Martin O'Malley, to perform an additional surgery on LeVert's foot, and so far, that calculated gamble is paying off. LeVert in his 3rd year is averaging 20 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, and 4.2 assists on a 54% effective field goal percentage. His numbers have jumped across the board, and you can not only tell that he knows he is the best player on the team, but you can tell that head coach Kenny Atkinson and the Nets organization have a potential cornerstone player on their hands. This is the Sly Hooper YouTube channel, and today we're going to be talking about Caris LeVert. LeVert weighed around 190 pounds leading up to the draft, but now he looks to be more in the 220 to 225 range. He was never a bulldozer when driving to the basket, but he was always wiry strong. He has slowly figured out how to absorb contact and make his way to the basket with his herky-jerky, stop-and-go kind of game. This has become exacerbated now that he is bigger and has more strength in his upper body. I was watching the Nets play the Rockets on Friday, and there were 2 plays that exemplified his ability to absorb contact. One play, he bodied up Chris Paul on a drive and got a floater to go with the foul, and keep in mind, Chris Paul has been a great defender for a long time. A few possessions later, he was able to actually lower the shoulder on PJ Tucker, who is the human version of a bowling ball, and created space for another floater. Per cleaning the glass, 42% of LeVert's shot attempts are at the rim, and he's converting them at a 62% clip by using all kinds of crafty finishes. LeVert isn't a world-class athlete by any stretch, but he still has good athleticism. He kinda feels like one of those players who plays like an under-the-rim player, but taps into his athleticism when needed. His explosion surprises defenders, and next thing you know, he's finishing at the rim. LeVert's handle has also been underrated in my opinion. It's nothing flashy, but it's tight, functional, and has basic crossover and dribble combinations. But with his herky-jerky style of play, it's sort of difficult for defenders to get a beat on the ball. That, along with LeVert's strength, has allowed him to live in the paint. When he makes his way to the basket, he is really good at using pump fakes and leaning into defenders to draw contact to get to the free throw line. So far this season, LeVert is averaging 4.5 free throw attempts per game while shooting 80% from the foul line. I feel like I might say the word underrated a lot in this video when talking about LeVert, but passing is another aspect of his game that is, well, underrated. Even in the limited time he played during his junior and senior year in college, he showed flashes as a passer and a playmaker. He improved his assist numbers from 3.7 in his junior year to 5 assists per game in his senior year. In a rebuilding situation, Nets head coach Kenny Atkinson has been trying a whole bunch of experimentation to see what works and what doesn't work. And in a lot of ways, that method has helped accelerate LeVert's growth as a playmaker. I know D'Angelo Russell has averaged over 5 assists per game since his time with Brooklyn, and he's a solid passer in his own right. But I'd actually argue that over the last season, and so far this year, LeVert has been the Nets' best playmaker. In the 2017-18 season, LeVert averaged 4.2 assists per game, and so far this season he is averaging 4.4 assists per game, but with his ability to score, the passing and playmaking he provides in addition just has more of an impact to me. He's getting more comfortable running pick and rolls and making plays out of it. He is also grabbing the rebound and pushing the ball to find shooters on the break, and he has been really good at making the correct pass when he gets into the paint, whether it's dumping it off to an awaiting big for an easy score or kicking it out to an awaiting shooter. Ever since Kenny Atkinson was hired as the head coach, the Nets have been a lot like the Houston Rockets in the sense that they've attempted a ton of three-pointers per game. So it's natural to question if LeVert's playmaking looks good because of the spacing in the system, or if he's racking up assists because his teammates have the ultra green light to shoot threes in any situation. But LeVert has an underrated basketball IQ, and some of his passes have been downright impressive. Wraparound passes, pocket passes, and knowing where the shooters are located and finding them accordingly. Having a wing who can average 25 and 5 is so valuable, and what LeVert has been doing so far is an incredible building block for an offense, and he still has room to grow. I know it's easy to look at a prospect with the physical profile of someone like LeVert and assume they can become a good defender entering the NBA. I've certainly done that before. We all have, but LeVert is a solid defender overall. For now at least, I think he will certainly be one of the better defenders in the NBA very soon. He has the frame of a prototypical NBA wing like I mentioned earlier, but the frame still needs to fill out to about the 230 to 235 range. He is inconsistent chasing players off screens and pick and rolls, and I think the main problem is that the screen setter can dislodge LeVert and put him a beat or two behind a shooter off ball or when he's chasing a ball handler in the pick and roll. LeVert is a very solid isolation defender, but I'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent so I can classify his isolation defense in the very good category, because I think he has shown flashes of that potential. He uses his feet well and has shown the ability to understand angles and leverage his good lateral quickness and wingspan. That's the advantage of LeVert's physical tools, and while he doesn't have a freakish wingspan of someone like Mikal Bridges, a 6'10 wingspan is still good and a very effective compensator when defending quicker players. He is very disruptive off the ball, and his relentless style of play keeps him engaged on that end of the court. Once LeVert fills out his body more and matures in the league, I could see him being able to defend 1 through 4 with great effectiveness. For me, there are 3 components to being a good defender: IQ, physical profile, and the effort to defend, or the willingness to defend. Take your pick on the last one. LeVert definitely has all 3 of these components. At the very least, he has the IQ and the effort part down. If he adds 5 or 10 more pounds, I think he will be able to physically hold his own against bigger players more consistently. But again, he does have the plus wingspan, height, and good athleticism to help him out. I would be very surprised if he didn't make a few all-defensive teams at some point in his career. The Brooklyn Nets took a home run swing with LeVert given his injury history, and they knocked it out of the park. I think if LeVert keeps improving and becomes a 22, 5 and 5 guy with good defense, then he really could reach that outcome of Diet Mountain Dew Paul George that I mentioned earlier. We do focus a little too much on the age-old question, could this guy be the best player on a championship team? And it's true that historically you need 2 top 10 players on a team to compete for a title consistently. But we do forget that having a borderline all-star or a very good player is also crucial in the team building process. LeVert might not become the quote-unquote best player on a championship team, but if he becomes a player that is way overqualified to be a second or third guy on a championship team, then that's a great outcome for the Nets, and he looks to be on that trajectory. The Nets have 2 solid building blocks in Caris LeVert and second-year center Jarrett Allen out of Texas, who like LeVert was also a late first-round selection in the 2017 draft. The Nets are also projected to have close to $63 million in cap space in the summer of 2019, so they have a lot of money to play with to try and build out their ideal roster. If the Nets play their cards right, then they could accelerate this rebuild faster than anyone expected. If you agree or disagree, leave a comment and let me know. Give the video a like, and if you like talking hoops, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as any and all support is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.